It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Monday, March 6th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful and awesome Monday? We've got current news from around the world, the Sunday Message Word Study, and of course, 2G Talks with Eddie Kwan from San Francisco. All right, everyone, how was your weekend? Yes, long weekend for me, but I'm sure you guys were able to enjoy and just rest, receive grace, fire from the Sunday message, relax, do your missions, whatever it is. But it's Monday again, and we can restart another amazing week together with the Lord. This week's message is Clear and Perfect Perception. Great message. It says, Clear and Perfect Perception, Jesus Christ is the only Lord. Really like the message. Very clear. It puts the lines, it gives us the guidelines, but it's nothing. Of course, all the messages we hear are nothing new from what is in the past, but great messages and very clear for all of us, especially at this time we're living in right now. It's a good morning to everyone out there on the Morning Star Drive. Glad that you're joining us here this morning. Some of you in the afternoon too, right? But I hope you guys had an amazing and awesome weekend. For me, man, just so crazy busy, really busy. I was in Bangkok from Wednesday to Friday, but our flight got delayed. And if you guys saw my Instagram, we're getting ready to take off. All right. So we've already taxied out to the runway. All of a sudden, they're making the announcement hey, it's time, seatbelt and all these other, how to do the seatbelt, the life jackets are under the seat, that kind of announcement. And in the middle of the announcement, the entire plane's power shut off. It just shut off. It was all of a sudden, we're all in the dark. And we're like, what is going on? They're like, oh, yeah, the engineers coming in. They reset everything. And we're kind of thinking to ourselves, is it safe to fly? Think about it. Right before takeoff, the power all goes off. And, you're thinking, what if we were in the air and all the power went out? How crazy would that have been? So I was praying, God, please, if this is not the will for it to fly, please just let the power go out one more time. But if it's okay, then let us go. But we ended up flying, and it was a little bit scary in the beginning, and then everything was okay from that point on. So that was okay, but it was delayed. So I ended up arriving in Malaysia at 2:15 a.m., close to 2 a.m. And I was exhausted. And then we got, what's even crazier is it's 2:15 a.m. And then on top of that, there's for some reason, at that time at night, there's 6 flights that came in, and they're all from vacation countries. There's Sabah, KK, and Singapore, and Thailand, 3 planes from Thailand, whatever it was. The lineup for foreign passports was so long, I didn't even get out until 3 a.m. So we got out at 3 a.m. All right. So I finally got out. My friends were waiting for me. We end up, going to the car, and we kept our car there. So we did long-term parking over there. And for some reason, there's they have this card that pays for the parking. It's called Touch and Go here. It wouldn't reload. So then we spent probably another 25 minutes just trying to reload the card, going back in and stuff like that too. I didn't get home until 4 something a.m. And the reason why this is crazy is because I had some friends coming from Japan, and their flight arrives at 6:45 a.m. And that's an hour drive to the airport, which means that if I get home by 4 and their flight comes in at 6:45, I have to leave the house by 5:45 or maybe 5:45, 6 a.m. And I was like, wow, there's not enough time. And luckily, their flight was delayed for about an hour. So I was able to get 2 hours of sleep in, but I was just exhausted. And I went to pick up my friends, and I'm really tired. And I'm going to tell you this, guys, that whole day I was driving them around, and then wherever they went, I would sleep in the car while they would do sightseeing. And I was just I was so tired. But now I'm slow. I got really good rest the next night. And then I'm planning to get more good rest for the next 2-3 days so I can really be up for it too. But man, that trip to Thailand was my break, was my vacation from the vacation I just had with my parents. And now I need a vacation from the vacation from my vacation. I need another break. I'm so exhausted. But I'm hoping everything will be fine. And, when you're really, really tired and stuff, your immunity goes down. So, I'm a little bit sick. My nose is like still, it won't get better. Like I'm still congested, stuff like that too. So, I can't stand it. But, besides all that, life is good. But, I think everyone is really trying their best to navigate with the proper perspective. And like this week's message, the clear and perfect perception as we navigate through this year of 2023. And I would definitely say right now, from what I felt, it's definitely the most challenging year. But one another thing that's very interesting is the more and more I clear my thoughts, my heart, and I think, and I'm looking at things in a more reasonable, rational way, then the more clear the situation becomes and the more I'm able to discern better. So I think that is something that we have to think about, is sometimes we just have to wait things out a bit, right? There's no need to make a decision right away. Wait things out. Things seem terrible, like the Netflix thing, everything, oh my gosh, it's so crazy, it's so bad, whatever it is, right? But we just have to understand it very, very carefully. Right? And wait it out. Sometimes, emotion floods in too quickly. You just got to wait it out and see what the next thing to do, right? And that's why, like, tomorrow's Provi in the Media, I will do, the first 3 episodes are on Providence, stuff like that too. So I'll do an episode summary and recap on that, just kind of my thoughts on what I saw. And, a bunch of my friends have already seen it too, and they're just telling me, oh yeah, it's like, it was produced really well though. And that's why it's, people could get misunderstandings and stuff. So I want to get a very clear picture by watching it myself. So I'll watch it and I'll talk about it in tomorrow's episode either way. All right. I also had a really good conversation with a friend from Korea, and it ended up becoming a conversation about understanding yourself well and becoming more self-aware, like being aware of what your character is like. So this person was just telling me a story that they were going through, very emotional things that they were thinking here and there. And, this person realizes they are a more emotional person too, and they really react by feeling. So it was interesting because that conversation, like I said, it turned into more of, oh, this is how I can become more self-aware, right? And because they were struggling with themselves. Like, why am I, I feel so bad because I'm so emotional. I feel like this. And kind of the answer is, when we understand what our strong traits and talents are, one of the hardest parts is a lot of times your strongest trait and your talent is usually your weakness too. If you become for me, it's confidence. And sometimes you get I get overconfident. I get too confident and it becomes a downfall for me too. Right. And, you could feel bad about it and feel guilty, like, oh God, why am I like this? But I think more importantly than when you're self-aware of what type of person, like this person we're talking to is more emotional, and they're sacrificial, and they're someone who gets invested very quickly in something, right? And we both of us, we kind of were thinking about it, talking about it together, and the end point was that there's no need to feel guilty about that. There's no need to feel like terrible, like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why? Because it's your specialty, it's your talent, right? Which is going to always have a good and bad point. Just like in the Bible, the snake is used for Satan, but the snake is also used for someone who's crafty, right? Where Jesus will even tell people to be like a snake, right? So you'll see a good points and bad points for everything. There's no need to feel guilty about it. It's just understanding your specialty and your talent, which can be used in so many amazing ways also, not just negative ways, right? So instead of just feeling bad and guilty about yourself, it's just about having that self-awareness and understanding, which means you can, because you know what you're like, you can still react and have the same emotions. However, because you understand yourself so much better, you know it's not as bad as it really is. Like that, the one conclusion we came to is, yeah, very dramatic, very emotional, very sensitive person. But when you get these extreme emotions, if you know yourself really well, you will realize to yourself is, oh, I'm a very emotional person, but it's totally not as bad as I think it was. So you're able to adjust because you know what type of style of person or character you have, right? And I think that's a big part. A lot of people aren't self-aware, right, of what they're really like. And, the conclusion was, it's not about getting rid of those things. It's about understanding yourself better, handling it better, and controlling yourself better, which means what? Which basically means that in the end, and I think that as, especially as someone who's grown up with my character too, being confident and aggressive and competitive and such, I think one of the things that helps me as I got older is as you begin to mature, you realize what type of person you are, and you're able to understand yourself and control it better because you know yourself. Like, oh, this is just me. It's totally just me. I'm just being over competitive here. Oh, okay, I shouldn't be doing this like this, right? And I think that's something that we have to realize much better too. Right? And I think that this self-awareness is a good thing, especially when you're going through difficult times. You might overreact or your thoughts might go a little bit out of control when it doesn't need to, right? So yeah, that was a good conversation. I hope that's something that you guys can comment on that too, if you're kind of like that too, if you're self-aware or if you still need to become more self-aware about these different parts about yourself too. The poll for this week is going to be, how has your 2023 been so far? Of course, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. So go ahead and go ahead and check out that poll. Hope you guys will answer that, right? So let's get some channel comments from last week. Some great comments. First one's from Daydream over there on YouTube. Says, man, I know that feeling of shock after an accident. I'm amazed you pulled off this podcast with so much grace. God was surely with you. Also, thank you so much for sharing your testimony. It gave me so much strength. Really, I can't express how inspiring it is. Sermons in the Sky was so awesome too. I have never been more moved by this story of Moses. Thank you. So, awesome, Daydream. Thank you so much. And you're the one that actually, I believe, were the ones requesting for the testimony on the 40 days, 7 hours of prayer. Christy on YouTube says, that testimony just made my heart set on fire and I cannot shut my mouth. I am so shocked. Thank you for sharing this powerful and inspiring testimony. Awesome. And another one from Yosuke over there in Japan. This is also on YouTube. It says, hey, Dr. Zinni, thank you for the segment. When we talk about health, we first think about physical health, and then as a person having faith, spiritual health, we may not be thinking about mental health as much. We try to learn how to make physical and spiritual health better, but not as much for mental health. Your podcast today made me think those 3 are very important. Besides writing down as many information under thoughts, feelings, and situation columns and grouping them, this technique seems to me something I can apply to wider topics, like writing down small pieces and grouping them to get good ideas what to tackle. So great job with health is happiness. Very, very thankful for that too. Thank you so much, Yosuke, for that wonderful comment. All right. And those of you guys out there who would like to get some Provi clothing, right? Some clothes out there with like some proverbs or things about your faith, go ahead, check out the site that's going to be in the description below. Go ahead, click that link, or I think you copy and paste a link into your web address site, all right? Big shout outs, Brian over in Hawaii, Bridget in Taiwan, I believe, and Christine in LA. Super grateful for all your support on Patreon, the financial support, for believing and supporting this channel. Without you, this podcast would not be able to continue. And if you want to support us too, then check out the Patreon link in the description. And if you're on SoundCloud, click the blue button on the homepage. Patreon is a crowdfunding site. It's just an amazing, awesome idea where if you had 1,000 people and they all put $1 or $2 in, then people can survive off that every single month. Like they can live their life, live like you're not going to be rich, but you're going to live a great life too, right? So that is something that I'm very, very grateful, thankful to all the people supporting financially too. And there's a lot of stuff on that site you could take a look at also. So go ahead, take and check out that stuff too. All right. So let's get into some music from member artists from around the world. And of course, we got some talented artists, and I'm very, very grateful for all the new music they're making. On this amazing Monday, we're going to start off with the Somebody Boys from America with the song, I love this song, Alone I Pray. And then Die Wings from Korea with the song Flow. And that's basically to fight off against slanders and accusers and such. Just saying, just go on with your life. And last but not least, we'll have The Sky from Japan with Home.
Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees, praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees, praying for you you to always come through. No, I'm not slipping through. No, I'm not falling down. The only thing that's falling's my knees on the floor. I'm praying, Lord, will you give me strength? Lord, will you give me power? I can't do this myself, so bless me in the morning hours. All the demons test me, but they will never shake me. If I pray, they hate me. If I pray, you love me. Connected with you is the only thing that matters. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. While I'm praying on my knees, I trust you with all my heart. For you always come through. For myself, for my family, for myself alone I pray. Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees praying for you to always come through.
I pray to never just settle for good when great is available. Who's the mastermind behind this mind? I give all the credit to God, that's why I'm back. They mad that I made it, I know that the Satans, they hate it. I keep working hard just to make progress. Now I'm on 10, trust the process, ayy. Look at my efforts lately, I'm setting conditions daily. I'm praying on my knees, so bless me. Please bless me, please bless me. Tribulations always come and go, I will never stop, just always know your focus determines reality, stay solid, that's why
I'm praying on my knees, I trust you with all my heart. For you to always come through. For myself, for my family, on myself alone I pray. Please don't let me down, Lord. I know I can trust you with all my heart. So I'm on my knees praying for you to always come through. Even if I pray all night, all I want is for your will be done. So I'm on my knees praying for you to always come through.
SB.
思い悩むことはない特に変わりはしないからいつもの笑顔のまま明るくやり過ごそう眉間にシワを寄せたあなたも可愛いけどその顔で長くいるのはとても疲れるでしょうさあ手を取って歩き出そう僕らの家へ帰ろう二人なら乗り越えられるから僕らの家へ帰ろうもうその涙拭って鼻水も噛んじゃいな繋いだ手固く握って離したりはしないから僕らの温かな方Home 帰ったらいつもの Homeさあ手を取って歩き出そう僕らの家へ帰ろう二人なら乗り越えられるから僕らの家へ帰ろう
And that was The Sky from Japan with Home. Before that, Die Wings from Korea with Flow. And of course, the feature artist of the day, that's the Somebody Boys from America with Alone I Pray. All right, so let's get into some news going on around the world. And especially as brides of this history, we need to pray. And if our prayers are that powerful and God listens to our prayers, how much more should we be praying and how much more should we be repenting for the world and what's going on, all right? So let's start off with the top 3 news around the world. We're going to start off with China. It looks like China looks at reforms to deepen Xi Jinping's control. If you look at the government and the economy, lawmakers meet this week in Beijing to pass far-reaching reforms. So the NPC, which is the National People's Congress, it's a rubber stamp parliament, will confirm Mr. Xi's third term as president and the appointments of his top team. They will also name a new premier, the second in command after Mr. Xi as incumbent. Li Keqiang is going to depart, right? So they're going to get a new person in there. And the 2 sessions, as the meetings are known, are an annual affair. But this year's sessions are particularly significant as delegates are expected to reshape several key Communist Party and state institutions. They'll tighten control over bodies overseeing the finance sector and scientific and technological work, while strengthening party-building work in private businesses, according to state media. And the moves will likely further blur the lines between the CCP and the government and consolidate the party's control of the private sector. And this comes amid an ongoing corruption crackdown, which has seen a string of high-profile businessmen disappear in recent years. The latest person to go missing was one of China's top deal makers in the tech sector. So this week's NPC meeting will also formalize Mr. Xi's leadership of the country as he will be elected president of China and head of the armed forces. So Nothing surprising here. It's just more surprising that they're going to kind of sink in even more deeply with this with the Communist Party, the CCP. So, excuse me, we're not going to see anything different for a while when it comes to China, and it's going to be Xi Jinping going to be in there for a long time. In second news, we'll take a look at the Ukraine war. And Kyiv orders partial evacuation of liberated city. So Ukraine has ordered some residents to leave Kupiansk as Russia seeks to retake the city it left last year. Kharkiv's regional authorities said families with children and people with limited mobility must leave due to constant shelling by Russian forces. Russia seized the northeastern city early in the full-scale invasion, with Ukraine recapturing it last September. Meanwhile, Russian mercenaries say they have practically encircled the key city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine. And in its latest news bulletin, Ukraine's military said Russian troops continued their offensive on Bakhmut, but the attacks were repelled. And earlier this week, Ukrainian President Zelensky admitted the situation in Bakhmut, it's about 130 kilometers southeast of Kupiansk, was becoming more and more difficult. So our prayers go out to stop this war. We gotta hope we need to repent for all the difference, all the stuff that we don't see, the politics, geopolitics, finance, all those things that we may not be seeing. We need to pray for everything. We can't just pray for one side to win. We got to pray that everything is taken care of altogether. Last but not least, a very historic agreement reached after a decade of talks. Nations have reached a historic agreement to protect the world's oceans following 10 years of negotiations. The High Seas Treaty places 30% of the seas into protected areas by 2030, aiming to safeguard and recuperate marine nature. The agreement was reached on Saturday evening after 38 hours of talks at UN headquarters in New York. The negotiations have been held up for years over disagreements on funding and fishing rights. The last international agreement on ocean protection was signed 40 years ago in 1982, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. That agreement established an area called the High Seas, international waters where all countries have a right to fish, ship, and do research, but only 1.2% of these waters are protected. Marine life living outside of these protected areas have been at risk from climate change, overfishing, and shipping traffic. And in the latest assessment of global marine species, nearly 10% were found to be at risk of extinction. These new protected areas established in the treaty will put limits on how much fishing can take place, the routes of shipping lanes, and exploration activities like deep-sea mining when minerals are taken from a seabed 200 meters or more below the surface. So this has been a big concern for a lot of people, especially environmental groups, especially the mining processes that could disturb animal breeding grounds or create noise pollution and be toxic for marine life. But this seems like a very, very huge deal for this treaty when it's protecting the oceans. And countries will need to meet again to formally adopt the agreement and then have plenty of work to do before the treaty can be implemented, right? So great news on that area to protect the oceans that we have and not pollute it too much. So that's probably an answer to a prayer that someone's been having for a long time now. So let's get into some sporting news then. Some short sporting news. We'll start with soccer. It looks like Arsenal comes from from 2-goal deficit to beat AFC Bournemouth 3-2 with the 97th minute winner, as Arsenal is able to reestablish a 5-point lead at the top of the Premier League. So that's good news for them. In other news, Kylian Mbappe breaks Edison Cavani's PSG all-time scoring record. Mbappe reached another landmark in his already record-laden career. So he surpasses Cavani as PSG's all-time top scorer with his 201st goal against Nantes in Ligue 1 on Saturday. So big congratulations to him. I think he's only 23 years old. In Diego Simeone, which is the manager for Atletico Madrid, makes coaching history as they thrash Sevilla 6-1. It marked the manager Diego Simeone's record 613th game as coach, right? So that's the record he has right now. So big congratulations to him. In some NBA news, quite interesting, Ja Morant to miss at least 2 games after displaying a parent gun in a video. So this guy's making like $30 million a year, and he's still doing crazy stuff like that. But one thing we do need to know, he's still very, very young. So he's going to take some time off on his own, 2 games at least, and hopefully that he'll kind of smarten up from that and realize that his life is tied to, all the stuff he does off the court also. Golden State Warriors, where Steph Curry is going to be coming back really soon, but they close out a 5-0 homestand run, so that's a great job that they've done without Steph Curry, and hopefully they'll continue to do better. And probably the biggest news in sports is MMA, as is UFC 285. John Jones comes back not as a light heavyweight champion, but he puts it aside, he has now become the heavyweight champion of the world. And he beat Cyril Gane 2 minutes and 4 seconds into the first round with, I believe it's a guillotine choke. And yeah, he's now the heavyweight champion. I think he's only the 8th person to have belts in 2 different weight classes. So that's quite amazing. Some other matches happened, but that was the big one. John Jones beats Cyril Gane. So you guys can watch the highlights over there on YouTube too. All right. So there it is, guys. That is the top 3 news in sports and news from around the world. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. It helps you guys out to figure out what you need to pray for too. So now that that's done, you know what that means. It is the golden time. And yes, this is the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. Hope all of you guys are looking forward to giving glory to God and the Holy Spirit. So, what are we going to praise and worship today? We're going to start off with, "The Lord is my hope and joy," and then "We have fulfilled the purpose of love," and we'll end things off with, "All we've lived through from the past to the present." So, as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
Life without the Lord, how could we live? No one could live like that. Without fun, without hope, oh, what kind of life is that? Since the Lord is my hope and joy, I'll always follow. The Lord is my pride. He is the source of my confidence. my pride. He's the source of my confidence. I'm happy if you're happy. The Trinity are happy too. That is all that matters. Since we found the path of life, now we can say time can keep flowing away. I'm on the way to heaven. We have fulfilled God's purpose of eternal love. In that golden heaven above, from the sunrise to the sunset, even as the moon begins to rise, even as the stars light up the night, we should go on serving God, serving the Holy Spirit. You and I should spend our days like this. I'm on the way to heaven. We have fulfilled God's purpose of eternal love. In that golden heaven above, from the sunrise to the sunset, even as the moon begins to rise, even as the stars light up the night, the Lord, we will love them with all we have, giving our whole body and heart, without changing now forever. We will love the Trinity always, without changing now forever. We will love the Trinity always.
And what an oldie but a goodie that is. All we live through from the past to the present. Before that, we have fulfilled the purpose of love. And of course, the Lord is my hope and joy. So now that our hearts are made ready through that time of praise and worship, let's get into today's word study. The title is Clear and Perfect Perception. Jesus Christ is the only Lord, right? And I think the thing that I appreciated the most was the introduction. And I think everyone received the same one. It's about listening to the word and understanding that we can't listen to everything all at once. Like, we're learning to pieces and pieces. That's why when you even listen to Bible study, it's broken up into pieces that are put into like categories or topics that are very easy for our brains to kind of digest and understand. And what has to happen is, sometimes we listen to a very general message about the big picture, and sometimes we're listening to the messages, excuse me, that is only a certain part, like say of the doctrine or something along that line. We just can't take everything in one sermon unless you want to sit down for like 50 hours. So through the Sunday, Wednesday messages, we're getting a better grasp of the different pieces and parts of all the doctrine that we hear. And then when the time comes, when we have all the necessary pieces we need, this is when we're able to assemble it together, right? And I think this is a very, very big point too. And you're going to find this, you'll see this a little bit more now, even now at this time when there's a lot of, like, say, people who are a little bit confused. You're going to find more of the younger people more confused than the older people. Because the younger people still are not able to grasp everything all together. What's the full picture? They've listened to a bunch of different parts, and then they'll listen to like today's message and say, oh my gosh, what does that mean? Oh, what's going on? And the answer is, well, we're going to find the answer is, hey, sometimes we get parts, sometimes we get the whole. But when the time comes, when you actually like fully mature, you're going to put all the pieces together, right? It's kind of like all those movies that you watch where, like, it reminds me of a movie of Usual Suspects, and all throughout the movie, hints are dropped here and there. And as the hints are being dropped left and right, at the very end, everything comes together where all the pieces are like, oh my gosh, I totally never saw this coming, right? So the younger we are, the more we focus on a single part, and the older we get, we begin to pick up more things to be able to put them together. So I thought that was one of the best, especially for the time we're living in right now, what's happening right now. This is a perfect introduction, right? Which means what you're listening to now, of course, is something that's in part of a bigger picture, right? So you're not going to just sit there and say, oh my gosh, this is what it means. Oh my gosh, what have I been realizing? You can't do it that way. You have to realize there are some things that are parts and pieces and some things that are the big picture, but you need to have, like the title says, clear and perfect perception. Clear and perfect perception, right? So what is excuse me, what is the first thing that we need to understand is who returns as the bridegroom, and it's, of course, it's Jesus. That's Matthew chapter 25, verse 1. It is the bridegroom, okay? So here's the thing. When you listen to this very carefully, you will understand what it means for us today too, right? So the first thing we realize is part of the message was about Jesus returning in spirit as the bridegroom, right? And remember, Jesus is not part of the Trinity. Jesus is still a human. He was born a human being. He had a body. So he's nothing, you cannot compare him to the Holy Trinity. He's not like God himself, right? He is someone from the earth who receives the Holy Trinity first, right? And then what happens there is he becomes the body of the Holy Trinity. And so then what happens next? Well, remember this. To understand this very, very clearly, it is from like the large picture of heaven and earth. The Holy Trinity is the bridegroom, right? and the people on earth are the brides, right? However, when it comes to the position of human beings, we cannot see the Trinity, right? We cannot talk to them and hear them. So the man of mission becomes the body of the Holy Trinity. Does it mean the man of mission is the Holy Trinity? Absolutely not. He becomes one with them in thoughts and shimjung. And because we know this, from our perspective, that man of mission, like Jesus 2,000 years ago, becomes the person who is the representative. So he becomes the bridegroom and we become the brides from our perspective because we can't see God or not, right? Because it's the man of mission that studies, reads the Bible, goes through all the different things for like, excuse me, for 20 years, okay? And Sunsi said the same thing. When he's 15 years old, he couldn't recognize that it was Jesus coming back in the bridegroom. He couldn't, right? And he had to ask first, like, hey, how does this work? And then Jesus would teach him those things. Like, Jesus would teach him and say that, hey, guess what? I am not the Holy Son. I am a human being just like you guys, but I died, and then I come back as the bridegroom, right? So what we need to do next is, once we understand the correct perception of how that works, we have to understand how to perceive the Lord in this time period, right? So, like, who is Jesus in this time period? Well, Jesus no longer has a body. He went to heaven. He becomes a divine spirit, and he comes back again, right, for the Lord's second coming. Remember, the man of mission cannot be Jesus. They are two separate beings, completely separate beings. One is Jesus, and one is the man of mission. They're completely separate, right? So you cannot literally be, like, listen to this, you cannot literally be the Lord's second coming because you didn't come the first time. So Jesus can become the Lord of second coming because he came a second time. So the Lord of second coming, you cannot say is the man of mission. It has to be the person, someone who actually comes back, right? So we know that for sure, but we have to also put into place and say, hey, guess what? Even though that's the case, the man of mission is not Jesus. We know that for sure, but just as the first coming, Jesus is not God, right? Just in the same way, the man of mission is not Jesus. However, he is the representative. He's the body of the Lord, right? So in the first coming, what happens is the Holy Trinity is unseen. So from the human perspective, we look at Jesus as God, right? Because he is the body. He is the physical presence of the Holy Trinity on this earth. Whatever the Holy Trinity wants, Jesus is going to say it, right? In the same way, too, if we want to know who Jesus is, if we want to know what Jesus is going to say, we have to listen to the man of mission who is the body of the one, right? Body of the Lord's second coming. So this is why it's easily to separate. The man of mission is not the Lord's second coming. Why? Because this is his first time coming, right? However, the Lord's second coming comes in spirit, so needs a body. And because that, the man of mission becomes the body, it doesn't mean he is literally Jesus. He's not literally the Lord's second coming because he didn't come a second time. Only Jesus' spirit is the Lord of the second coming. Only the spirit, right? And then he will use the body, right? So you have to kind of understand what I'm implying also at the same time, right? So the history of the Lord's second coming and the Advent is done by Jesus, right? He is the one coming back a second time, and yet he needs a body to represent who he is. So you'll not know who he is unless you know the man of mission, right? So it will be the one with the body is not literally Jesus, and he has not literally come a second time. Right? And that's what has to be perceived very clearly and perfectly, right? So you can't say, oh, the man of mission is Jesus. No, you can't say that. And that's what it's saying, but there's also many things that it's implying too, right? All we need to know is that it's Jesus that comes back in spirit, right? And we're never going to don't be swayed by falsehood. Just know that we have, this is something that I talked about along in the past too, is whenever people ask us, the misconceptions is people are saying that the man of mission, like Sunsim, is God or Jesus. We're like, no way. Sunsim has never said he was God. He's actually against that. He says even he worships God. And Sunsim has never said he was Jesus either, right? So when you understand this, we're going to be like, oh, okay, that makes a little bit more sense then, that he is someone who is not literally God or Jesus, but he is the one who comes as the body of the Lord's second coming, right? So that is something that we have to understand very clearly, right? The second coming is the continuation of the first coming, right? It's the same Jesus who came 2,000 years ago. And this is kind of part of the sermons we've heard a long time ago. It's just emphasizing this point right now, right? So don't go off and make assumptions. This is emphasizing the point we've heard many times before. This is not new to us, right? This is not new. Just know that this is emphasizing that point, right? Jesus' spirit, he's invisible, he's coming back again. So we have to be those that we cannot see him. We cannot see him literally, and that's why we need the man of mission to speak on his behalf. So that's why we can clearly separate between Jesus and the man of mission, right? We got to separate between the two. And this point is very good. And this is one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people have made in the past is when they focus only on the man of mission and they treat the man of mission as God, right? And you don't want that, because that becomes, and Susie's talked about this a long time ago too, is that's just physical faith to only look at the man of mission because he's representing someone else, right? So we need to understand, just making sure that these points are very, very clear with us. And remember, like I said, it's only reiterating the points we already know, but focusing on that point itself, that Jesus and Sunseem are not the same person. And that's something we've always known since the very beginning. They're not the same. Jesus is not, just as Jesus is not literally God, we know that, Sunseem is not literally Jesus. It's not like that. Okay? So now that we have to be those that understand is, if you pick up one piece and understand this one information learned today, it doesn't mean you throw away all the other pieces we learned in the past. You keep those things too, right? It's just that as we grow up and we mature, we're able to take up all the other pieces of the Holy Son's branch entity, the Holy Son's original entity, right? How does rapture work? How do the clouds work, right? The mission, the man of mission, what is the role of this time period here? Right? That's something that you just can't throw away. And that's why that first part, that intro for this week's message is powerful, right? How do you know the Lord's second coming has returned? Just look at the words we're learning. All the things we didn't know in the past, we're learning right now. We're learning some of the greatest seals have been broken, from like time, times and a half, to history, to Trinity, to rapture, Advent. All these things are being broken. The seals are being broken. This is why we know the Lord's second coming has come, right? In spirit, not in the body. This is one of the things we teach is Jesus doesn't come back again in the body. Jesus comes back in spirit. That's one of the biggest points that we're making, especially when it comes to clouds, right? So we're learning about the Holy Son. We're learning about the branch entity. We're learning about resurrection and Advent and rapture, all these other different things. Don't throw those out, but just start to piece them together. You don't take one point and throw everything else out. You take this one point and start piecing it together with the other things that we've learned, and you'll realize it's not different than what we've learned in the past. It's not. It really isn't, right? And those of you guys trying to refute it with me, we can have a very honest discussion. We can. Right? Because it's this, even the stuff that I'm hearing now that you might assume, these are some of the things I've heard, especially, in 2009 and 1999, stuff like that too. So it's not something that's really shocked me to that point. Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Back in 2008, I was a bit shocked, but as I learned and realized more and more, this is where I'm able to say, okay, I got it now. That makes sense to me, right? So we have learned absolutely clearly, right? And what is our role? Remember, the purpose of creation is for us to become the counterparts of love to the Holy Trinity. That's the number one thing. Live receiving the Holy Trinity as the bridegroom, centering on them, serving them, loving them with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? And all we need to do, one of the big points it made in this week's message is to serve and live with the Holy Trinity and with Jesus. It is to live as the body of Christ. Right? In the body of Christ, we have to live as the body of Christ. What does that mean? It basically means that we're going to be those that, living as the body means to be those that follow the head. Whatever the head says, we need to be those that follow and do exactly what the Lord asks each and every week. Right? Believe in this history, believe in the one that God has sent, and when we listen to the words of this time period, we put them into action. Right? So we have to be those, especially that last point is, what is our position as people of this history? We have to be those that, realizing the shimjung of someone not having a body and only a spirit, can't do anything on this earth, then with that shimjung, you become the body of the Lord, right? So I hope that everyone, that last point I loved, reflect on yourself as we go through these difficulties, because through the difficulties, you get to see the little, the mistakes, the parts about ourselves that we're not very good at, we don't like. You get to see all those things, and you realize, wow, I really got to fix this even more. And it only happens when you go through the deep, dark times. And this is how we make ourselves clean. So I hope that all of us can have that clean perception, right? And so we got to be those that don't shake. and always, we have to always make the Word as the head of our life, right? Then we can live as real brides of this history forever. Okay? So I hope it's something that if you guys have any more questions, we can do it for the Q&A Thursday. I'm sure there's a lot of questions from this week's message, but I want you guys to know that this is only one piece of a large puzzle, and don't throw away the other pieces. And that's going to be probably the big thing that everyone has to realize and recognize too. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is the word study for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. Hope you guys have an amazing and awesome time just having this word study together, which leads us into our this is our song of choice for today. And this is one of the songs that I used to sing a lot, even, probably like 15 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. And we sang it in church a lot too. It's from Hillsong. It's an old song, but it's a very, very powerful lyrics, as in, as everything is crashing around us, we have to be still, right? Still, and understanding that God is with us, that God is the one taking care of these things. So don't get caught up in the chaos. Don't get caught up in the winds and the waves and the crashing things all around us. But we have to be those that really believe and say, you know what, God, if you are in control, as all this craziness goes around me, I will stand still in your love, in your grace, in your power. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed this. One of my favorites from the past. This is Hillsong with Still.
I need find rest my soul in Christ alone. Yeah. Know His power in quietness and trust. When the oceans rise and thunders roar, I will soar with you above the storm. Yes, I will. Father, you are king over the flood. I will be still, know you, Lord God. When the oceans rise and thunders roar, I will soar with you above the storm. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. You are king over the flood. I will be still, know you, Lord God. When the oceans say, I will soar with you above the storm. Every single word, I will be still, know you are God. Oh, yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are.
And what a powerful song. That is Hillsong with the song Still. And I hope it was something that gave you guys a lot of grace also. All right. So let's get into the final segment for today. And of course, every single Monday we have 2G Talks with Eddie Kwan, who's currently in Hawaii at this moment. And, you know, he just wants to share a very encouraging message with everyone here. So I really hope that everyone will listen, especially just, you know, in spite of all the chaos that's going on around us. Everyone, please welcome all the way over there in Hawaii right now. That's Eddie Kwan with 2G Talks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another week's episode of 2G Talks. I'm here today specifically to refresh your guys' hearts and to be able to give hope and encouragement to other people, because that's been really on my mind like all throughout this weekend. For me here, it's Saturday, and it's it's ultimately been a really great day, but for a period it was kind of tough too, because I had this for the Sunday Pass service, we had to deliver an education, and I was so grateful, but the church members here wanted me to prepare something to share. And I was like really thinking, like, you know, it had to do with all the current circumstances and everything going on. And I was like really thinking about it. I was like, like at first I was like, like it seems like the subject matter of that, I was like, like it's not really something that I am super keen on talking about, because it was just like there's many better things to be discussing. And I was like, it felt like it was taking time away. So I was just really trying to integrate everything and to be like, okay, I don't want to talk specifically about, you know, the slander and the difficulties that we're facing, because it's like it's never been about that. It's like more focusing on like the positive things, the good things, and the things that give us hope even in these sort of situations. I was like, okay, I'm gonna piece it all together like this too. So I was like racking my brain, and I was really thinking about this, and I think the Lord really gave me a full day today, where like he had me experience everything that I could in order to kind of prepare in order for the education tomorrow, as well as to share this with you guys today too. So like just to share, like even last night I was like with some of the guys here and the ministers here, and we like slept really late, so I probably slept like an hour and a half before we went to the morning service. And then afterwards, I was like preparing for the education. I was like reading the scriptures that Something Name gave us and stuff too. And then I was like running. And one of the newcomer guys, who's like super active and he's very physical, like he was like, "Hey Eddie, like, do you want to go do this hike with me?" So like I mentioned to you guys, at that point I had slept like an hour and a half, and I was like coming back from pre-dawn, and I really wanted to get this education done too. But I think God had set up everything so that I would go. Like there was a split second where I hesitated, because the hike that he wanted to go on is actually this really famous hike here in Hawaii called Coco Head, and some of you across the world and across the pond might have heard about it too. But it's really like it is like, it's by no means like a super long hike. It's about 1 mile or so, which for you guys elsewhere, yeah, that might not mean much, but it's about 1 mile, so it's really not that long, but it's like vertical. Like it just goes straight up, right? And so they have these like kind of train track like stairs like built into the side of a mountain, and it literally just scales all the way up. So for out of like, I've gone hiking many times, but it is one of those hikes where I really feel like I gotta gear my mind and feel like I signed up for it in order to go and like to have a good time and stuff like that. So that, like, so there, that was the reason why I hesitated when the newcomer asked me, because it was just so last minute. I didn't prepare for it. I wasn't ready. But even from the pre-dawn time, I think God was pushing me to go actually. So like in the pre-dawn, like one of the blessed family members at the morning service was like, oh, like, are you guys going hiking today? You look like you're about to go hiking. And like it wasn't even at like anywhere close to our mind like to go hiking. So that was the first thing. And one of the other things here is like, while I've been in Hawaii, I bought my GoPro, and one of the things I really want to do was take a lot of footage while I'm here, because it's just so beautiful here. Like it's just like, the more we go outside and the more we do things, like the more and more beautiful things you just keep finding. And even the same thing, it's just like, so like, one of the first things that we said when we came here is like, it's so HD, like the nature, the greenery, everything is like so HD. And so I really want to capture that. But it had been a while since the last time we had gone out and that I recorded something on my GoPro, so I didn't charge the batteries because I had no need to, because typically like I'll know ahead of time whether I'll need it, so I'll only charge it if I know that I'm gonna be using it. But for some reason the day before, even though nothing was going on, I like randomly decided to charge it and charge both of the batteries that I had. And then so when the newcomer asked me, like I hesitated for that split second, but like even in my mind, automatically I was weighing out all the things that I had prepared. And then I was like, oh shoot, like God, like from the very beginning had like prepared that for me today. So I went on the hike, and oh my gosh, it was so hard at first. At the end, it was harder. Like it was so difficult. Like at first, I was like alternating my feet as I was going up the stairs, and then my back was screaming. So I switched to taking like 3 to 5 steps on one foot and then switching over to the other foot. And then my quads were like screaming, but I got to do maybe like 60-70% of the hike using that method. And eventually, I couldn't even do that method because my quad was just done, like on both legs. So I was like, okay, I just gotta go and I gotta take steps. And that last third of the hike, it was so difficult. It was like you just mental torture, right? Because my body is like, it's just like suffering, and then like it's like you can't even turn back at that point, and you wouldn't even turn back, right? That's not even a thought that crosses your mind, because it's just gonna be just as hard to go back, and you're already all the way up here, like, and you don't even have to think all these things, right? Because on your mind is more just the fact that's like, okay, you just gotta keep going on ahead. But I was like, we persevered, we made it through it, we went all the way to the very top, and like that whole experience for me in a nutshell was like kind of like a miniaturization of everything that's been going on, right? And like just overall, like with how life has been for myself too, and I think for many of us as well, right? Because like we want to keep ascending, we want to reach that level. So like I don't want to encapsulate it into just words, but I'm sure that everyone at home has at least been on one hike before, even if it's not something that you enjoy. And so there might, you probably experience a time where it's like that almost excruciating pain of going uphill. And so like I was experiencing that, and I was like, you know what, I'm still gonna do it anyways. And so like that was something that I experienced today. But throughout that whole time, there was something like that we were thinking, because with the education too, I really wanted to sing this one song actually, because we listened to it last week over here in Hawaii, and I was so moved while listening to this song. It's one of the newer songs. It's on Palm Station. It's called "I Believe in You," and it's like when I was listening to it today after experiencing that hike, and even before, like on my way to the hike, I was like listening to it by myself, and I was like crying. I was like singing the song. I was crying, and actually, there's certain songs that I think are better in Korean, and some songs that I think are better in English, and some songs that I think are equally good in both. But I Believe in You is one of the songs that I think the Korean translation is. I mean, the Korean lyrics are much better. I really hope that the English can be better so that it can capture the same feeling that I got, because it's actually the feeling that I want to convey tomorrow in the education, and that's why I really picked this song too. I really hope that people can enjoy this song, and to kind of break it down, right? Because if you haven't listened to the song, go listen to it. If you have already, but you don't feel it, like maybe you don't read the Korean lyrics, and so you're looking at the English, or like even if you are Korean, you just haven't experienced that same thing. I was like, wow, it's so moving, because like the verses, it says a couple of things, right? It doesn't say it like this, right? This isn't even the connotation, but there's a part where like it starts off by saying like God, like, you, it says you showed me, right, your heart, right? You showed me your earnestness. That's what it says. Like, that's how I take it. Like, you showed me your earnestness even before I could, right? Even before I did, is what it says. But I was really thinking about that, because what it's saying is like, even when I couldn't be honest with you, you were honest with me. And it says in the second part of the song, it says like, even when I couldn't believe, you believed. You showed me how to believe it, and you believed in me. Right? So it doesn't say all these things, but I really felt that. I was like, because each of us have experienced this. Even when I couldn't do it, God did that for us. God believed. Even when I didn't love first, even when I didn't love, like, God loved us, and He showed us how to love. And it's like all of those things encapsulated in these lyrics, and like there's like so many layers to this. And so I was like so moved. Right? Actually, the part that I was like most moved by originally was like just the bridge and the chorus part, and the final ending, because I think this is what we need in this time, and this is what the word does for us in this time. Because there can be many confusing things, but actually the clarity is with the word. And so like all of this like superfluous things that like kind of cause additional chaos and confusion, I was like, oh, honestly, none of this is really even necessary. Right? So in the very end, in the chorus, it says, you gave me light instead of darkness. You gave me love instead of hate. Clarity replaced confusion, and peace replaced uncertainty. And you gave me life that lasts eternal, far beyond this time. And I can't help but love you. And so I really felt that. It was actually starting from the part where it says clarity replaced confusion, because I was like, this is what we need. And this is what really the word does, right? It makes things clear, because I realized that, when you have confusion and when you have fear, because I think nowadays, like, fear is the biggest thing. Like, when you go from fear, you have confusion. So even though, like, the thing that you're actually fearing is actually really small. It's so small that if the fear was actually a reality, you would just deal with it, and it would get over it, and you'd be able to fix it, and then you would be able to move on. But because it's like uncertain, you don't know how to act. And so instead of that, what the word does, it gives us clarity, and it teaches us each and every moment, not just in our current circumstance, but just like all around. It teaches us how and what it is that we need to do in each and every moment. So I was really moved by that part, and then it made me think of using the song for the education, and then I was listening to it over and over and over again, and I was like praying and crying, and I was like confessing to God using this song. And so I really hope that everyone else can kind of enjoy it to that level as well. Lastly, in line with this idea of clarity replacing confusion, right? I think one of the most interesting things for me was like when we talk about doctrine here in Providence, and like there are times that people ask questions, right? And I think it's fine to ask questions. Like for me, like one of the most interesting things that came up recently was about like about the Messiah, and about the identity of who Jesus is versus something, all of those kinds of things, right? And then it's like the thing with me was like it's like that discussion was never really that important. But then a scripture came to mind when I was talking to the members about this, and it was actually from John 14. And I actually used the scripture in the morning message last Monday. And it was like when Philip and Timothy are asking Jesus, right? When Jesus is telling his disciples about that he's gonna become crucified, right? And like in that time, like Philip and Timothy are like, they first say like, oh yeah, how do we know where to go, right? If you don't tell us, like, if we don't know the way. And then, like that's when they also say like, like show us the Father, right? And the thing with that Jesus has been doing this entire time, and that the man mission of this time period has been doing this entire time, is showing us exactly how it is that we need to live and that we need to take action. And like one of my favorite verses from, and the scriptures from Paul too, that he shares is like like when he's like writing to the churches and writing to the church in Corinth too, and like he writes in the letter saying like, people say that in person I'm not as impressive as I am in letters, right? And like I guess people expect him to preach like really fiery and passionately and like in this great way, but he doesn't really do that at times in certain places. And he was saying, actually the biggest thing that I've been doing for you is showing you through actions how it is that you should live, like what it is that Jesus has taught me and what it is that the Trinity has taught me. And so that was the biggest thing. That was like such a shocking thing from John 14 and from the all of the letters that Paul has written to. I was like, this is what it is. Like this is what has been given to us. I was like, there's no need to be confused about any of this because it's so clear to us, right? Like this is just how it is that we should live. And so this is something that I want to share with each person, because I know this is something that we all know, but it's something that we need to be reminded of. Sure, yeah, of course, like you can ask questions about doctrine and stuff like that. I honestly, all of that's very important because we do need people who know very clearly. But there's kind of a difference, right? Is it that you want to know clearly so that you can explain things well, or is it that you want to know clearly because you're confused and like there's like a lack of clarity, right? But the clarity has always been there. And so just something that I want to share, because this is really what God has done for us. This is what Jesus has done for us, right? He showed us God through his actions. He said, I did nothing apart from God. I did nothing apart from my Father. And so I really hope that as we go forward, like throughout this week, that you will have certainty in your life, like knowing like this is what he did. Like as we talked about with the song, like I believe in you, like from the beginning, like even when we couldn't be honest, even when we couldn't believe, he showed us his heart and he was honest with us. Even when we couldn't believe in him, he believed in us first. And because of that, we can believe in him. And even when we couldn't love him first, he loved us. So we can't help but to love him back. And this is the life of faith that we live currently today. And so I really pray that each person can really experience this and feel this throughout this week. And I really pray that all of the storms and waves, that it'll blow over and that we can have confidence in our history, knowing where it is that we've come from and where it is that we're going.
And thank you so much, Eddie, for a wonderful, very inspiring and motivational talk, just to help us to kind of navigate ourselves through this chaos we're going through at the moment. I know I keep saying the word chaos a lot, but I just want to let you guys know that, yeah, it is. There's a lot of messy stuff going on around us, but we have to be those that stand still, right, in the light of all this craziness, and just leave it to God, and knowing that, as we pray and we take action on the things that we need to do, God will take care of these things also. So once again, thank you, Eddie, for another wonderful and amazing segment. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Please drop a comment for Eddie below for just his amazing work that he's done and for the encouragement he's given to us today. All right, everyone, have amazing and awesome Monday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.